Are they able to, Aditya? Can you let them in?
Yes, anyone who's asking to join in, and just ask them. Yeah, so Sahil
Yeah.
just joined in. Vikram came in.
Hi, Sahil.
Hi, Sahil.
Hey guys, what's up?
Hi, good, Sahil. So, Mr. Balachandra is also on the line. Aditya, can you give his introduction?
Yeah, so we'll just introduce. I'm just waiting for Chennai to get in, and then I'll get you guys to meet each other.
Sure. Hi, Vikram.
Hi, Monil, what's up?
Hi. Very good. Hi. Vikram, your voice is little less audible.
Nice to put a face to the voice, to the text.
Yeah.
Same, man, same. Can you hear me now?
So, your voice is little inaudible. I think so. Your mic is little far away.
Okay, wait, I'll just sort that.
Yeah, okay.
Anjan is online.
No, Anjan hasn't come in yet. Chennai just joined us.
Okay.
Hi, Chennai.
Hey guys, how's everyone doing?
Hi, Chinmay.
Hey,
Hi.
Chinmay.
I hope your Sunday is going great, and I think so. We are going to make it better.
Are you giving me some crypto?
I wish. Do you like Dogecoins?
I can't say that I do, but at the way it's going, I don't mind some. Yeah.
Vikram is not shaking his head like rigorously.
Not at all, man.
No.
Not at all.
I think I agree with Vikram. I have to.
Hi, Chinmay.
Hi, nice to meet all of you.
Nice to meet you. Same.
So,
man. Hi, Sahil.
Hey, Vikram, nice to see you. Finally.
Common groups so other people can join. Can we start this somewhere? Are you
Anjan is not yet come in. So should we wait or should I just post it?
I think let's put it out because we
Yeah.
promised before. So
Yeah,
let's start
sure. We have 2 minutes, so we'll just do a quick. We'll just do a quick introduction amongst each other. Okay, I will
Just
just
send him
go
a private
first.
message, na Anjan ko, before you start, so he can join in
No, I'm calling him.
Just send him a private message. I'll call him otherwise.
Guys, I was just wondering what the format we should like kind of follow to as a basic outline would be.
Should I go ahead and tell you?
Yeah.
Okay, so from 4 o'clock we are going to start till 4:15. We'll have a brief introduction.
No.
Okay, so over here the admins, we have 5 of us, and we'll try and get the flow in. Okay, there's Vikram and Anjan will be moderating. Okay, me, Sahil, and Aditya will bump in here and there. So till 4:15 again. So then post 4:15, Chinmay and Bala can take over. I think so. An hour is good for you guys.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
we'll try to get it done by 5. You think?
5, 10, whatever you like, and post that if you're willing, we'll have a small Q&A session. We're not going to do any kind of tips and anything, or I'm sure that the people are very excited to listen and even ask you that what do you think about this and that, which crypto to buy and which crypto to short, and apart from that, till 5:30 we'll have a Q&A, and post that we can conclude, and we are because this is our first seminar, so what we are doing is post 5:30 we are going to have a small breakout session amongst each other, and we are going to bump off ideas and stuff like that. So if you guys want to be a part of it, we'll love to have you, or else we are just going to have a ball of a time. Who's that?
Yeah. So I think it sounds good. Bala and me can kind of start off with just explaining. So I would say that Bala is the real subject matter expert in terms of investing and kind of different things from the DeFi space. For me, I think where I can also help to begin is to give an introduction into crypto. What is so? I saw a few questions that Aditya shared, which were more, for somebody who is new completely to the space. topics. So maybe I can, get us started off from there. Bala, is there anything specific you have decided or, thought you'd talk about?
We have people joining in from outside, and I'm just admitting them in.
Okay, sure.
Meanwhile, we can continue this chat.
Yeah. So, yeah, Chinmay, you're saying something, right?
Yeah, so I think we can start with just an introduction, because I think a couple of people had raised questions saying they are pretty new and they just want to know how what this is, what is crypto, what is going on, right?
Correct.
Yep.
Correct.
More than
So,
anything else, Chinmay, if you're doing an introduction, there's really a shortage or a want for a confidence building exercise for a lot of the new people on
Yeah.
board. They really need that confidence. And I know, of course, if whatever you say, even that might not even be say, because it's not in your hands. But
Yeah.
but maybe some facts and figures and some kind of validation, which is really your drive, which makes you go all in, and the so many other million and billions $billion that are put in by even single people going all in. What is that reason to convince or to just justify with people with a peace of mind, giving them a peace of mind कि
Yeah.
हाँ यार मैं बराबर डाल रहा हूँ, अभी 10,000 डाला, कल 1 लाख डालूंगा, परसों 10 लाख डालूंगा, it's safe. That mindset little bit is required. Everybody is wavering, like
Yeah. Sure.
So I think so. We have people joining, and I think so. I can see 10 people at least.
People are coming in, so we have about 16 people on the group right now. I think let's give it another 5 minutes, and then let's start with the.
Yeah, 4:15 is the the time we have committed. Before that, let's have a small introduction. Vikram, you or Anjan can take it over, and you can help everyone understand why we have done this, and again introduce Chinmay and Bala.
Yeah, so this, I believe when we first started out on WhatsApp, we were a small closed group, and immediately a lot more people wanted to join in, and then slowly we migrated to Telegram, and now we are, where we are. And this point regarding a webinar and getting everyone together and having everyone talk to each other was something that I think you guys were talking about for quite a while. So I think it's finally happening. I'm really thankful for that. And when you told us that Chinmay is going to be joining us, so that was that was fantastic. And so basically what we hope to learn from this, and I think what Chinmay has to offer, like something that Sahil was mentioning, was an introduction into the crypto sphere as a whole, for people who have no idea about what they've come into, and just not to treat it as trading. This is something that Anjan and I were speaking as well, that I feel that at least I'm not in it for the for the trading bit. So I think that's something that Chinmay can explain to us. And although you hadn't revealed where he's actually from for reasons where he actually works.
Yeah, so because it was something, but informally, Chinmay and Bala, can we introduce yourself? Introduce you guys.
So I think something from if they just introduce themselves.
Yeah, so I'll just be short. Like Chinmay is from CoinDCX and Bala is from ZepPay.
Actually, I'm not from CoinDCX. We both working at crypto exchanges. So we both work together, and I think that should suffice, right?
So they have been in the field since a pretty long time. So I've had some conversations with Chinmay. So both of them have been in the field since a pretty long time. One is working as part of the product development team, and I think the other one is also part of the same team as well. And I think they're the best people over here to guide us about the technology, the blockchain on which everything is built, as well as the relevance of the coins to that blockchain and to the countries and the world at large.
Absolutely.
So, Chinmay, if you want to give a small introduction about yourself, also Bala, if you can help us with the introduction. We have over 25 people. We
Sure.
like in 10 minutes we will the stage will be yours and will be the spectators. So take it away, Chinmay and Bala.
Bala, you can go first.
Okay. Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. Good evening. So I'm Balachandra. I have been in this blockchain and crypto space since 2017. So my first crypto project is on Ethereum. So that's how I came into Ethereum. And then like slowly I started looking into other blockchain. So I'm not an avid trader, but I'm a hodler. So you can say I'm like one of the best examples why people should not trade when they don't have enough experience, because I have lost a lot of money in 2017 trading, and that too in a bull run. So you can understand how bad the decisions I have made. And slowly I gained knowledge. Now I'm in good profits, I can say that. Uh, and as of now, I'm working in exchange, crypto exchange, and I'm also working as advisor for a couple of companies regarding blockchain.
Lovely, lovely.
Yeah. So hi everyone. My name is Chinmay. I work with Bala in the crypto exchange as well. So I think my first kind of interaction with the first time I bought Bitcoin was in 2014 when it was, I think, $300. And everybody wants that price back, including me. I spent it to go on a vacation after I made like what some, I think, I 1.5x it, and it was a very small amount anyway. But I think since then I've always kept track of what is going on in this space. I've also built a couple of applications for crypto before the RBI banned it, and since then I kind of wanted to always be associated. So very recently I joined up with the crypto exchange. It's been 2.5 months now. So now I'm looking at it from an internal perspective and working on it, and that's something I've always wanted to do. So I think for me it has always, like Bala said, I kind of am not your go-to trader guy. Like if you ask me, okay, how do I read this chart? How do I predict what's going to happen next? I have heard a number of stories of people kind of losing out in their profits where they could have had lakhs and lakhs of rupees today, tens of lakhs of rupees today, and they've lost it all because they thought, this thing that is super trendy, people are making so much money, they suddenly millionaires. I want to get in on this, and feeling that FOMO and acting on it really hastily, and today they're much the worse for it. So I think very early on I had recognized a few good projects, a couple of good projects that I thought held a lot of water, and I had kind of hooked onto them, and I can firmly say even I am a hodler. I'm not somebody who runs by the market sentiment. That okay, guys, this is going to go down. Let's quickly sell it. Let's quickly. So if I am bought into something, it would be for the fundamentals and kind of the long-term vision of it. Yeah. So yeah, that's about me. Thanks.
Lovely. Thank you, Chinmay, for giving your introduction. Also, thank you, Bala, for giving such a lovely introduction. We are very keen to understand how to hold for a long time, because again, the FOMO, what you spoke about, is something which happens every single day in our group. क्या खरीदना है? अरे जल्दी जल्दी बताओ. अरे this is pumping. अरे this is dumping. So how one can avoid transactions which are loss making. Again, how does crypto work and how it is different from stock exchange? And again, the tips and everything, what not the coins, but how to be successful in a crypto, like the field at whole, is something which we are looking forward to. And I think so within 5 minutes we'll be starting, and I think so Bala and Chinmay can take the stage. We are 5 of you who will be moderating. Let me introduce the CH team. We have Vikram, Vikram, can you just wave so that people can see hi? We have Aditya, and it's me. I'm Monil. My name flashes as CH or MS. We have Sahil. We have Anjan. Anjan, if I'm not able to see Anjan. So again, Anjan is yeah, hi. So Anjan is PJ. So जो भी डॉगी और डॉज कॉइन में डाले हैं एंड मेड मनी सबके अन्नदाता टीजे कैन यू जस्ट वेव
I didn't actually play Doge, so I think I can make money on it.
So we have 5 of you, and we are always here to help. We have over 34 friends who have joined in, and if you guys want to like add anything, any kind of questions, there is a click which shows raise of hand like at the bottom of your the screen. So we will understand that you have a question when we do a Q&A, and that will be great. Mansi has raised a hand. Mansi, you can still, it has not started. We have 3 minutes. If you want to post a question, please go ahead. You have to unmute yourself, Mansi.
I think it was erroneous.
Oh, okay. Okay. Anyone wants to add anything to it? I'm just blabbering and I don't want to bore everyone. Please go ahead. We want to hear from. Yes, please.
Yeah, Vikram.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just thought that if you wanted to get things rolling, I had a question for Chinmay. What do you feel was the biggest problem that was facing centralized finance? Why do you feel that blockchain technology, the thing that we believe that blockchain technologies are actually the answer to the problems that plagued centralized finance? Like what are the basic differences and what are the holes that this blockchain space helps fill in the current financial system? What are the beliefs that you have in terms of the future of blockchain? Just to get things rolling at a very basic level.
So honestly, it's not so much that decentralization. Obviously, it is fighting centralization, and there are very core reasons for it. But for a second, just think about it like this, right? I mean, essentially, the nature of money has been, or currency has been, the first time that the first discovered writing for that humans found, the oldest writing was a hisab ka ledger, right? There's always been some way or the other to keep hisab from the earliest times, right? So I think what we are looking at now is an evolution of that, right? And it's always kept changing. Like it could have been gold coins, it could have been rocks, it could have been, through the ages we have changed, and in the form that we see today, it's not even the centralized one is not even 40-50 years old, right? So what we are looking at essentially is disruption in this space. The reason, of course, that this disruption began was the 2008 crisis, right? Where Satoshi Nakamoto sat up and said that there's too much power centralized within these banks, and they're severely misusing this power. They had completely over leveraged situations, which came crashing down on them, and what he intended to do at that point, saying that, solve the problem, which was that how do we ensure that somebody globally we can ensure that to identify the state of how much money you own, and ensure that you don't double spend it, right? That was his basic problem statement, that I want to know how much Vikram has, so that I can know that how much he can send to Sahil.
Understood.
Right.
Yeah.
So essentially, it's just keeping a track of your money, or and that doesn't. So what that was the problem he was trying to solve, right? And his lookout was that we don't need centralization in this, right? We can handle it in a trustless network. Yeah, absolutely. We don't need trust. We don't need somebody to tell me that no, you cannot spend your money right now, or just like Robinhood did with GameStop, that suddenly stopping. So these are the kind of situations that have been happening all the time, and decentralization basically ensures that there's a trustless system, right? So that's what we are looking at right now with decentralization. The value of decentralization is that nobody has control, right? Nobody can censor you, right? If you have the keys, you can spend your money, right? And that is a big statement in the kind of situation we are in right now, right? So I think decentralization has a lot of pluses over centralization, and I think there's a lot of scope for us to discover even more. I think this money, even the money angle, is just the first angle that we are exploring, right? There could be a lot of other, including identity, including all sorts of things, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So something that you mentioned about no one controlling it and no one having central control. I feel this is one of the things that actually scares away newcomers, because people somehow find the reason that the current model has existed and flourished also is because people find security in trusting someone with it. Trust also plays a very big deal. So immediately, if you pull the rug from beneath them and tell them that, look, this is a completely decentralized system and it's based on a trustless system, how do we tell people that it's actually more secure than you think? It's currently more secure than any other financial system ever developed. So how do we convince people to, how do we allay their fears?
Sorry to butt in. We have exceeded the time. Can we take this Q&A post they finish?
Absolutely.
Okay. Sorry to be the party pooper. So let's get started. Chinmay and Bala, the stage is yours.
So what I'll try to do to begin with, I think I'll try to take the next 5-7 minutes just exploring the concepts of cryptocurrencies, and then Bala can take over. And obviously, Bala, please feel free to chime in on anything if I've missed something, or if you have something to add, right?
Sure.
Yeah. So I just want to start off by saying that, like I said, cryptocurrency is just a form of, as the latest form of currency. The invention of cryptocurrency is just the latest invention in a long line of inventions in transactional, currency, right? It is only digitally that it exists, right? There is no coins or notes that represent it, right? So and the way it works is you don't need to go to a bank and open an account to have an account on say a Bitcoin address, right? You don't have a Bitcoin account, right? You just have an address, right? And if you have a calculator with you and a dice, you can generate your own address, right? So essentially that's all it takes to be. That's as inclusive as it is, right? It doesn't need any permission from somebody, your KYC, your background, your credit history. There are no there's no permission within the system that is required to create an address. So if I were to get into crypto today, if I have an address, if I have generated an address, and there are n number of ways to do this, then I can immediately start accepting currency, right? Without asking a bank to register me, right? So and when you transact on Bitcoin, there is no middleman, right? If I have the correct credentials, if I have my key, then I can send a transaction to anyone around the world. It doesn't matter where they are, right? It's a completely global currency, right? So what I want to outline here, it's completely censorship resistant. They cannot say that, okay, Vikram is somebody I don't like, so let me censor his transactions, or it's not that, okay, I need to ask my bank if I have this kind of feature to transact to this person in this part of the world. So there is no permission, right? And it's completely P2P, right? So no middleman there, right? So what you can see also happening right now is that around the world, not only people but institutions have started to trust this system, right? Because of how trustless it is, they have said that, okay, since we don't need any middleman, we don't need any trust in the system, we can do all of it on our own. this is a system that we can all vouch for. We can all trust. It's not that I need to have faith in somebody to take part in this system, right? Which is a big deal, right? And you can see this trust developing over a period of 10 years, and by the price of Bitcoin right now, right? It's whatever dips you see. If you ask somebody like me who has been seeing it since it was $200-300, seeing it at 50,000 and then going down to 48,000, I literally can't care less, right? So having seen that development of trust over a period of time has been amazing. It's reached a point where people actually trust it. And you can see, I think if I have to explain why the price is so high, essentially right now, I think with Bitcoin, it is a lot of this year, the last year, you have seen a lot of institutional investment in this, right? You have MicroStrategy, you have Tesla, you have a lot of people. Square has bought in for more than $50 million. PayPal has started now processing transactions at their 29 million merchants worldwide in Bitcoin. But Tesla has made more money in 2021, I think, in 10-12 weeks than they did in 2020 selling cars. So I mean, that's the power of the institutional money coming into Bitcoin. You'll see a lot of now ETFs popping up here and there. You'll see a lot of people now switching their reserve currency from gold or from USD to Bitcoin, right? And this process has kicked up the price and the demand a lot. And you'll also see that a lot of people are not selling right now. So if you see the amount of money or Bitcoin moving away from exchanges today is phenomenal, right? So these are the people who are saying, I want to buy in when it's cheap and I don't want to sell it. I want to keep hold of it, right? The other thing where Bitcoin plays a big role and where you can see prices, adoption along with prices, I want to add here, go up a lot is a lot of countries have failing financial systems. You think of Venezuela, you think of Turkey, you think of Morocco. There are situations in those countries where Zimbabwe, where it just doesn't make any sense holding their local currency anymore, right? And in these situations, right, we probably are not facing a similar situation, but if you think about it from the people who are, the one solace they have, the one safe place they have today to store their hard-earned money has become Bitcoin. Right, so you'll see a lot of these countries where they are facing a financial crisis, quickly kind of buying up Bitcoin. Right, they are saying that, okay, I have worked 20 years, 30 years, 10 years, whatever it is, and I want this value to remain. I don't want it to diminish because people are printing notes. Then that's where they turn to Bitcoin and other cryptos, right, where they feel that as a store of value, it is so much better than what is being offered to them by their countries, right? So here we've seen it's really picking up in a big way where people need a better store of value than is available to them. And I think the third big point here for the price of Bitcoin rising is, of course, there's been crazy speculation, right? I mean, even big financial institutions like your JP Morgans are saying that Bitcoin is going to reach $130,000 through their reports, right? And Citibank is saying that by December it will go to $300,000. I mean, these are people who are analyzing it maybe at some point to their detriment. The growth is to their detriment, but they are still giving very bullish targets for Bitcoin, right? And this is something that has made people really buy up Bitcoin right now. So people are buying it up, stocking it up, and not selling it. They're not leaving it on exchanges. So I think that's been a big reason why Bitcoin it's the big daddy of crypto. Bitcoin has the price that you see it is, the largest market cap that you see it has, right? So let me just take 5 minutes more to explain how does this work. What is like to somebody, what is Bitcoin, right? How do I understand the technology behind it, right? So I think there are 4 to 5 major parts to this system, right? The first part, like I said, if you're villa enough, you'll do it with a dice and a calculator. But essentially, if you want to start participating in this ecosystem, all you need is a wallet and an address, right? So there are a lot of ways. You can have a wallet that is custodial, that is an exchange. Basically, you sign up for an exchange and they hold your coins for you, where there are risks associated with it. because if it's not your keys, then essentially it's not your coin, right? Because all that's identifying it is your keys. And you can have your own wallet on your laptops or in your cold storage or on a hardware device as well. So the first part is you generate an address to participate in this ecosystem, right? So once you have an address, you can start receiving money to that address. You can share it as a QR code to somebody, and that becomes your your ID, your address, right? The second part of this ecosystem is a network of computers, right? So when we talk about decentralization, how is it achieved, right? So essentially, Bitcoin has a software which runs, which validates all the transactions that are currently ongoing, right? So in that case, every computer on the network verifies that any transaction that has happened is correctly authorized. So if I have said I want to transact to Monil 1 Bitcoin, right? I need to prove to the network of computers, and this network of computers, by the way, you can run it on a Raspberry Pi in your house, right? You can become part of it, right? So you can start validating and verifying transactions, right? So all I need to prove is by signing my transaction with my key, I need to ensure that the network of computers ensures that I actually own that 1 Bitcoin, right? And I actually have that balance in my address of 1 Bitcoin, and then it approves the transaction, right? So it's a completely decentralized way where not one person but everybody is validating it, right? The third part in this ecosystem is that is miners, right? So before a transaction enters what is called the blockchain, which is let me just go over blockchain first. It's just a ledger of all the transactions it's a history of time for Bitcoin, right? It's the history. It's the series of transactions that have happened since the inception of Bitcoin, where all the transactions will be on that ledger. So you can always go back and trace back. It's public. It's a public ledger, so you can always go back and trace back for your particular addresses. What was the history? Where did your money go from and to? And that kind of stuff, right? We have very, very sophisticated softwares now analyzing these ledgers called it's called chain analysis, right? So a lot of these are also present, but essentially blockchain is a ledger of all transactions that have happened. Now these transactions, if you look at Bitcoin, it happens every period of 10 minutes is when a new block gets added to the blockchain, which includes all the transactions that have happened in the last 10 minutes. And this is the block that the validators, what we spoke about, the network of computers verifies, right? Right. So let's go back to miners for a bit. So how do they add a block to the blockchain? It's basically they listen to all the transactions. So if I have
Chinmay,
Yeah.
1 second.
Yeah, sure.
I think you're going a bit too fast. Like for those who already understand Bitcoin, it's okay. But I think for new people, it might be a bit fast. Yeah. So what I'll do, I'll try to explain the concept again in plain English so that maybe people can, and then I'll add some technical details here and there. So please do let me know, like if you have any questions regarding the technical details.
Guys, just one more thing. If you guys have any questions at all, you can just simply mention it on the chat session. So when the talk ends, we can have a look at it and maybe we can try and answer those questions for you guys.
Yeah. Okay. So guys, like I was just trying to explain what Chinmay has done. I was just trying to add some more points. So basically, we're all talking about cryptocurrencies, right? So everybody knows fiat currency. So what is a cryptocurrency? Crypto is currency, is a form of a digital currency. So then, like, why the word crypto? Because this form of digital currency uses cryptography to provide security to your data, basically to make sure that other people are not spending your money, all this stuff. So like we'll get more in in-depth details in cryptography and all later. Okay. So now let's just see like what's the motto, like why Satoshi Nakamoto. There might be like hundreds of reasons why Satoshi Nakamoto has designed this system. So like 90% of the people, or maybe like mostly people, assume, or because nobody knows Satoshi Nakamoto, right? He's like an anonymous guy, so nobody knows what is his real motto. We just assume that since the timeline matches, because if you see when was the first Bitcoin code got committed to GitHub, or basically when it was first started, the timeline matches with the 2007-2008 financial crisis. So basically, people assume, or like we all, even I myself believe that the reason why Satoshi Nakamoto has designed this system because he doesn't like banks.
And one more thing here, Bala, he had posted a photo of the newspaper cutting of the banks falling.
Yeah.
When he had posted his white paper, yeah.
Yes. So now, So basically, in my opinion, the main motive behind Bitcoin is he wants the system, like basically he wants everyone to have the financial freedom. Like why would anyone go to bank in the first place? Like in India we get interest and all, but if you see in US and other places, you don't get any interest on your deposits. And even if you get that, that is very low. And even in some places like Japan or like maybe like South African countries, you have to pay extra because bank is maintaining your money and they are giving you the functionality. What is that functionality? Transfer, right? Whenever, let's say if I have to pay something, if I have to buy something online, that functionality is being provided by banks, so we are paying them. So now that is okay, but what's the main issue with banks? The main issue is I'm depositing my money into bank. Now what is happening? The ownership of your money changes from ourselves to the bank, and now bank decides what to do with our money. They will say that no, you can't transfer at this particular Sunday, you can't transfer at this particular time, you can't do this transaction. They will put in all the rules, just like how RBI has banned us like 2 years ago. So why would anyone, like, just for this functionality of simple transfer, why do I want to change the ownership of my money to bank? So why can't we achieve this without banks? So how can we achieve this without banks? It is kind of difficult, right? Because banks provide you all the functionality where banks verify your transactions for you. Banks keep note of all the things. Like for example, I have to send 1,000 rupees to Monil. So without bank, I can achieve this. I'm talking about like in 2007, 2008. So now the system that we designed, the new system, the new economic system that we designed, shouldn't have a central third party like bank. So if you don't want a centralized third party like bank, the other option is decentralization. But then like, so is Bitcoin or is blockchain the first product of decentralization? No, right? We have been using Torrent. Torrent is the best example for decentralization. We have been using them for like ages. So now, but what's the issue? Because just with pure decentralization, we can't achieve anything. For example, pure decentralization works like peer-to-peer. Let's say, let's talk about a torrent scenario. Let's say I have some game or some movie which Monil needs. So I'm like the seeder and he is the leacher. So I'm uploading and he's downloading. That's how usual torrents work. But this is okay for a movie or like a normal thing, but for financial, the issue comes here is how can he verify that I'm providing him the proper file? I might be providing him some virus, or like the another issue is like he is downloading, I'm uploading at 50%, I stopped my system. All of these things like this can happen. So that's why Satoshi designed this new system called blockchain, which will impart all the things that we need. For example, the security, the privacy, like the availability, everything onto this decentralized system. So now when we are talking about Bitcoin blockchain, the main things that we need to understand is address or wallet, first point. Like address, I'll just come to that in a minute. And then minings, basically what is this mining means, how does this miner works, what's the use of it? And then the third part is basically the network, the entire like network. How can you join it? Like basically, how can you be part of the network? So now let's first come to the address part. Address or wallet. What is this? For example, let's say you want to open a bank account. What's the first step that we need to do? Like, let's forget about the KYC part, but the first step is you need to register with your bank, right? Like you need to provide your mobile number or else like email ID, like some form of identification so that bank can identify you, you are this customer. Not only, let's not talk about banks. Let's say you want to register on Facebook. You need some form of identification, right? Like either your mobile number or email ID. So likewise, even in Bitcoin system also, even it is decentralized, even it is anonymous, there should be some form of identification for each and every person. So that identification in blockchain system, because we cannot use email address or mobile number or country document ID, something like that, because blockchain is a public network. This will impart the privacy. So what Satoshi has designed, he designed a system where we can create something called wallet keys. Like basically it's a key pair. We call it as a key pair in cryptography. It's basically public and private key part. Each key pair is basically, it's like a pair, right? It has two parts, one public key, one private key. So your public key, so public and private key are very simple. Basically, whenever you want to send information, let's say in simple words, if you want to send information to someone in secret, you can use this cryptography. So you can use the private key to encrypt the information, and usually the public key kind of denotes as your identity. So we can like, if you guys have any questions at the end of the session, I can like deep dive into like cryptography and all this stuff like encryption, decryption,
So if I
distributed
can
encryption.
summarize, you are basically having the public key and a private key. When your private key basically validates your public key. So if I want to
Yes.
send something, I will use your public key, and you can validate it using your private key, and that is how the transaction will go through. The public
Yeah,
key and
so yeah, even in simple words, I can say, let's say if you are doing a check, right? Like when you're writing a check, your signature validates your check, right? Like in the same way in blockchain, your private key acts as your signature. So using your private key, you can sign transaction. Let's say I want to send 1 Bitcoin to Chinmay. What I can do, I can create the transaction using my public key, and I can validate it using my private key, so that the mining network will see the transaction, will verify whether my private key, like they can't directly verify, but they will verify the signature and then they will approve the transaction. So this wallet acts as your identity. So how do you generate your wallets? There are hundreds of ways to do it. So basically, when you're talking about wallets, there are two ways, like two major parts, I can say, or two major types. One is self-managed wallets. The other thing is custodial wallets are basically like the exchange managed wallets. For example, if you are buying something on an exchange, any exchange, basically Binance or something like that, you are not managing that wallet. Binance is managing that for you. So you don't directly own that crypto. You just own the numbers. But if you are managing your wallet, again, like it can be hardware, cold storage, like software wallet, for example, it can be a mobile app, or it can be like paper wallet also. So what do we mean by we manage a wallet? That means the private key of that wallet is with us. So basically, it's personally, it will be with us. So there are pros and cons for both systems. What is the con for like self-managed wallets? You have to keep your private key very secure. Like if someone can steal your private key, all your money is lost. Or else, if someone like if you lost your private key, I know one guy like he's my friend. He has mined bitcoins in 2015-16. He has got more than 400 bitcoins, but he lost his private key. So all of this thing is
the downside is that if you lose your private key, there's no way to recover it.
yeah. The downside is like, yeah, if you lose your private key, there is no way to recover it. So that's about the account section, like where you have like your private key and private key. So now coming to the next thing, the next point is mining, right? So first thing, before going to mining, so what do you mean by this mining? Why do we require this? Is let's talk about a simple transaction. For example, let's say I want to send 100 rupees to Chinmay via ICICI Bank. How does this transaction work? I'll log into my bank and I'll initiate this transaction. I'll try to initiate this. So bank will verify whether I have enough balance or not. If I have enough balance, bank will process the transaction, right? So now let's do the same transaction in blockchain world. So now here the main difference is, in a normal client server model or in a normal world, bank has all of my data. So it maintains a record of all of my data so that bank can verify whether I have enough balance or not. Now you're talking about blockchain world. So we already discussed that in blockchain, there are no third parties. It's peer-to-peer, right? So if it is peer-to-peer, how does Chinmay know whether I have enough balance or not? Let's say somehow he knows about this transaction. Somehow he knows about this transaction. Let's say he has the copy of all of my transaction. Basically, he has the copy of all the transactions happening around the world. Let's assume that we already have this ready. So now I have made a transaction to Chinmay, right? I have sent 100 rupees to Chinmay. Like in Bitcoin world, I have sent 100 Satoshi to Chinmay. So me and Chinmay, we both agreed on this transaction. So since we both know this transaction, what we have done, I have deducted my balance. Chinmay has added this balance. So now Chinmay wants to send this 100 Satoshi to Monil. So how does Monil knows about this? Because we are in a peer-to-peer situation, right? The only way Monil knows about this is Chinmay has to broadcast this transaction to everybody in the network. For example, all 52 people in the network, Chinmay has to broadcast this transaction to all 52 people. Then only they know that Chinmay has received money from me. So he can spend it. Otherwise, what Monil will do? Monil will say, according to my records, you don't have any money, so I won't accept it. Okay, let's assume that this is also done. So now comes the difficult part. If Chinmay is broadcasting transactions, how do you guys make sure that he is broadcasting correct transactions? He might be broadcasting fabricated transactions, right? He can be a bad actor, it's possible. So how can we make sure that we don't have this done? So one thing is, because all of you guys know my public key. What you can use my public key and verify the signature, verify my signature on this transaction. So all of you guys can do it. But the thing is, how can all of us do that? Because we are all from different parts. Maybe a computer engineer, like maybe those who are into crypto, they can run their own nodes and do all this stuff. But how can you make sure like everybody, like a lawyer, a doctor, all these guys do that? So that's why we have this concept of nodes. So basically what we can do, let's say if we are not able to do this by ourselves, what we can do, we can depend on a third party called full node. Basically, there are some people who runs full Bitcoin nodes. These nodes, what they do, they sync up all the Bitcoin transactions. You can depend on it. So this is also fine. Then how come, like, what is this concept of miner? The question here is, Chinmay is broadcasting transactions and you are verifying transactions, which is fine. But let's say I'm a bad actor. I joined this group because this is an anonymous group, right? So I joined this group with some like XY as my user ID or something. Assume that. Now I keep on broadcasting fabricated transactions. I'm just doing, that's my only job. I'm just spamming the network with fabricated transactions, and all of the full nodes are busy verifying those transactions only. I'm spamming, they're verifying, and they're saying that no, this is bad. I'm again spamming, they're saying this is bad. So you can block me. People can say, okay, this is simple, I can block. I join as again another node, and they keep on doing this stuff. So how can we make sure that the people who are broadcasting transactions are not spammers? So that's why what Bitcoin has done is basically the blockchain, what Bitcoin blockchain has designed, I mean, like Satoshi has designed is, before you broadcast a transaction, do some work. Make sure you are a correct person. So to give a better example, let's say we get a lot of scam emails, right, every day. If Gmail has introduced a policy where it says you have to pay 1 rupee per email, those who are using email for official purpose, we might be okay, like paying 30-40 rupees per day. That's okay, right? But those spammers who send thousands of email, they'll stop because they have to pay thousands of rupees every day. So spam will get reduced. Like they won't do it because it's their business model. But let's say this kind of thing can be put. Same wise, what here blockchain is suggesting, before someone broadcasts a transaction, you have to prove that you are a correct party. So how do you prove that? You will do some mathematical work. So what is this mathematical and work and all? We can discuss in detail later. So you just need to solve some complex problem that is very difficult. It takes lots of computational power and electricity to solve it. So why this mathematical problem is, basically, let's say Monel is the bad actor now. So he is broadcasting the transaction. He has solved this mathematical proof, but he's trying to broadcast fabricated transaction. Assume that to solve this mathematical proof, it costs like $100 to $500, depending on like the day and all this thing. So now, after doing all of this stuff, people will again won't accept Monel transaction if it is fabricated, because the digital signature verification is already there. So now before broadcasting, I have to do all this work. So now if I have to do all this work for each and every transaction, it would be difficult, right? So what we do, instead of doing all this work for each and every transaction, we'll create a block, a group of transaction, a batch of transaction. We'll form it into a block, do this per block, and then broadcast. So now, not everybody will have like the ability to do this or spend this amount of money, right? So basically, the people who have the ability to do this work and spend this money and form this block, they are called miners. So now the question is like, why would anybody do that? Why would they spend $500 or like $1,000 per block? Because if they are able to do this work, because they are doing something good for the ecosystem, they will get something called block reward. So this block reward as of now is 6.25 Bitcoin, but then it gets reduced every 4 hours. So that's the part of miners, and usually how the Bitcoin transaction lifecycle works. Let's say I'm sending some money to someone, like some person by, I'll log into my wallet provider, like an exchange, or maybe I'll just connect my hardware wallet to my system or app. I'll initiate the transaction. For that, what I need is just like email. For example, I want to send an email to Chinmay. What I need, I just need Chinmay's email address, right? I don't need to worry like whether Chinmay is reading or not. I don't need to worry about anything. I just need Chinmay's email address. I will just send an email. So who can read it? Only Chinmay can read it because only Chinmay has the password. Likewise, here also, I just need the public key or public address of any other Bitcoin wallet. I'll just send my Bitcoins to that wallet. So who can spend those Bitcoins now? Only the person who holds the private key for that public address. Only that guy. So now I'll initiate the transaction, and this transaction, I'll just push this transaction to either my own node or maybe like some other full node somewhere. And the miners who are doing this hard work, they'll pick my transaction up sometime, and they will verify like whether everything is fine or not. If everything is fine, they'll process the transaction, put it into a block, and then broadcast the block to every other person in the network, so that everybody knows that Bala has, like, not Bala, some person address 123 has sent some Bitcoins to address 456. So this is how the transaction life cycle works. So guys, like, any questions before we go further? Hello.
Yeah, hi, Bala. Thank you for explaining things, but I have a little question here. I have, in fact, posted in the chat also. So when you talk about miner, and these miners actually, how does these people know that there is a transaction taken place? Like, for example, if Chinmay has given some amount to Monil, how does this miner comes to know that is there? So what I'm thinking about is even it is a peer-to-peer, is there a database which has been there?
It's
Or
being
is there a-
broadcast. There's a
Yeah.
protocol where if you listen on, you can start listening on the transactions that are being broadcast currently.
Okay, so
Okay.
basically
Peer
these
to peer,
almost all of these peer-to-peer decentralized systems, they work on a protocol called Gossip protocol. So using this protocol, what we can do is, let's say I'm new to Bitcoin and I have created a Bitcoin node right now. So it will use that Gossip protocol to connect with other Bitcoin nodes in the network. And then all of these nodes, they just broadcast, they just sync up like every time, you can say. This
Okay.
broadcast does not only involve the created blocks, this broadcast involve the mempool. What is this mempool? All of these unconfirmed or like newly created transactions, they go into this memory pool, and then this memory pool also gets synced up in the background.
Okay, so is there any website where I can see, or what site, when you say
Yeah.
this?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
basically, yeah, there are websites. So there are websites called Explorer. So basically, Explorers are available for almost all major popular blockchains. So what is this Explorer means? Explorer is just like a UI interface for a full blockchain node. The famous one is like Bitcoin blockchain.info, sorry, Block Crypto. These are like famous ones. And for Ethereum, we always have the Etherscan, which is like the famous one. I'll
Okay.
just post some links in the chat later.
Okay, so these miners then, they get some kind of utility tools to do such things, or is there just a computing power which they are just spreading up some scripts which is doing this mining
Yeah,
thing?
so basically, these are just some scripts. They don't have any utility tools. They are just some scripts. But the thing is, like, let's say you can run your Bitcoin mining node on our normal laptop also. The only
Okay.
thing is, how this mining works is, let's say we 52 people are miners. So what we do, we all try to mine the next block.
Okay.
And out of this 52, maybe like 20 people have achieved it. But Bitcoin blockchain cannot give rewards to all 20 people, right? So it always try to give rewards to the person who has completed it first.
Okay.
So that means
Okay.
speed is also very important. So that's why what people have come up with, they have come up with these missions called miners. So miners are just like an altered computers which have like high graphical processing units and all this stuff, so that they can mine faster.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Nikhil. Bala, you can take it over.
Okay. So this is how like the similar like a simple blockchain system like or Bitcoin system works. But now what I want to do is like Chinmay has given you all very good points why you should invest in crypto. So now I want to be the bad guy, and I'll just try to give you some points which will say not to invest in that particular crypto. Or like when not to invest. I can give you live examples also, or like my own examples, what I have done in the past and like why I have lost money, so that I think it might give you some insight. The first thing is, whenever you are investing in crypto, always make sure that the crypto is, I can give you like one example first and then you can start. So you guys might have heard the news in 2017, 18, I don't remember the date correctly, but there is this news that Telegram is coming up with their own blockchain called TON blockchain, and there is this news that they will do ICO very soon. And then like at that time, ICO is in full bloom, right? So for those who don't understand, ICO means initial coin offering, where they try to sell some of their coins so that they can raise money. So now what happened at the time, some person, like some people, they have like saw this news, and then basically they use this news to create a website, and they have created a token sale platform also, which is not by official Telegram people. They've just created, and lots of people have invested in the token sale, and then they just left with all the money. Even I am one of the persons. You can ask me like, you are in industry, so why did you do it? Because what happened at that time, it is 2:30 a.m. in the morning, and I have got lot of money in lots of other projects. For example, Aave Lend, I have invested in the ICO, and then basically I got good profit. So because of this, I was worried. Usually what happens with these good projects is, within few minutes, all the tokens will be sold. It's like, for example, now, today the PlayStation 5 sale happened, within minutes the stock is empty, right? Similar thing. So I didn't spend much time, and I just invested nearly, at that time I invested more than 2 Ether. At that time, Ether price is very low, but you can assume like how much I am, and all of it is gone. So always make sure that you are investing in correct product, and always make sure that you are investing or you are buying correct token. Sometimes what can happen is, there might be a token like BAT is very popular, Brave, basic attention token. So what I can do in blockchain, I can create my own token, and I can just call it as BAT only. So there are some people who create these clone tokens. So always make sure you're buying the correct one, and always make sure the product has good credentials. That is one thing. And when it comes to DeFi space, because as of now, everything is like DeFi and NFTs are very popular, right? So the question is like, how do you know which tokens are correct? There are ways to verify, like how do we know which tokens are correct? Like one way is like, always check coin market cap. They always try to give you like behind, or basically they always try to give you like mostly you can say verified information. Sometimes they go to coin market cap and check all.
Bala, we are losing you.
Network issue, I think, where your voice is cracking up.
Link.
Bala, are you there?
And check in social media, or you can say, and mostly check the direct website of that token.
Bala, we lost you for last 15 seconds. Can you repeat that?
Yeah, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, please. Now we can hear you. Can you repeat the last 15 seconds, because we are not able to hear you?
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, Bala, we can hear you now. We lost you for the last 15 seconds.
Okay, yeah, actually, so basically I'm working, bad reception. Yes, thank you.
Yes.
So what I was just saying is, like, when it comes to DeFi and NFT space, because as of now, DeFi and NFT are in boom, right? Like, and you might have heard, like Uniswap is like Uniswap and Compound. You can say they are the first protocols who has created, like, you have launched this space, you can say. But now, if you see, there are hundreds of swap protocols available: Uniswap, PancakeSwap, BurgerSwap, QuakeSwap, like even the Shiba coin, the meme coin, and it's also, they are also saying like they launch a Shiba Swap. And if you see, there is this new thing that started 2 days ago that is called Kuni Swap or something. And I even bought 5 billion tokens of that just for fun. So basically, always check. There is this concept in DeFi space called TVL, total value logged. So always check how much value has been logged in this protocol, and that value should be directly proportional to the price of the token. So make sure you, when you buy a new DeFi token, check the TVL, check how many holders are there for the token. Let's say, like, sometimes what happens, if you see Dogecoin, Dogecoin is very popular, but the thing is, Dogecoin is mostly centralized. Only few people have like you can say what you call a majority share of the Dogecoin.
Very few
So
only
what can
most of
happen?
the coins available.
Yeah. So in this kind of scenario, what can happen if they try to like make money or if they try to do a rug pull, will lose money, right? So always check how many holders are there. Like if that coin has like millions of holders, that means that coin has been trusted by millions of people. So it's a bit more safe. So always check that and always make sure like check the TVL value of that.
Uh, uh, can you guide us about where you can check these values? Because a lot of people over here would not know that.
Yeah, okay. So, as I said, CoinGecko, CoinMarketCap, mostly like these sites will provide you like mostly all of these major details. I recommend these two only. There are like hundreds of sites to monitor your portfolio or like to check more details. But why I'm recommending these two because they are like most trusted ones. And don't always try to believe CoinMarketCap because now CoinMarketCap has been acquired by Binance. And sometimes, right, like if it is not being maintained by a community anymore and if it is acquired by a big exchange. So, as of now, there are no reported case of false information, but just to make sure, like check other providers also.
I think so.
So there is
Lahar
one,
had a question, Bala.
yeah.
Lahar, go ahead.
So my question was the same. What Aditya just pointed out, as you know, when Bala was mentioning that there are certain places we can check these. I just wanted to know if there were any that you could recommend. And he said CoinMarketCap, and I just got onto that website. So fairly detailed stuff there. So that was mainly my question for now.
Okay. Yeah. And there is one more question that like how do DeFi managers or make sure that the whales doesn't basically do a rug pull or this kind of stuff. So there is a way in smart contract to manage this, but not every DeFi project does that. So there are some DeFi projects where let's say if you are buying in bulk, there is a possibility in smart contract. Basically, you can do a vesting process. Let's say you're buying 1 billion tokens. What they can do, they can make sure that you're not selling or you're transferring the entire 1 billion at a time. So what they can do, they can put a smart contract where it says, okay, we'll release 10% of your funds every 3 months. So this way they can control the flow of funds. This is possible, but not every product or project does this. So you have to like, how can you verify this? Usually whenever a new project launch, there are like people who give reviews and smart contract audits, right? So check them like ICO bench and like basically there are like, I'm not remembering the names directly right now, but there are some companies who does these reviews and they give you score and they give you the contract audit for that smart contract. So always make sure you do this. So one example that I can give you is, so I think you all know about SushiSwap, right? So what happened with SushiSwap, if you remember, SushiSwap might have been died by now if that event is not discovered before, and then basically if like people have not treated it better. So what happened with SushiSwap? The person, so we all call him Chef, Sushi Chef. So that person, the person who created this SushiSwap contract, and basically this is one of the main reason why Uniswap V3 has put a license on their code. So basically what is SushiSwap? It has done something called vampire mining. That means it directly acquired liquidity from Uniswap pools instead of like attracting customers on their own. So that is okay. Some people have like said that vampire mining is bad. Some people said it's okay. It's their own idea. That's all okay. But then what happened is the number of sushi tokens that are being minted, the chef, the sushi guy, he has right to like basically he has right to buy all of his sushi tokens at one price if required. So basically what happened is nobody knows about this. Like unless someone reads a smart contract or someone checks the balance, nobody knows it, right? So, but at one point that guy tried to convert, like I don't remember the amount exactly, but tried to convert his tokens into Ether, and we found the transaction. So basically what happened, then the community came in and then the community forced him to transfer the keys or basically transfer that funds to a multi-sig wallet which is being maintained by the community. So after that event, Sushi Swap is being sustained. Otherwise, what, like, we don't know whether the Sushi guy is good or bad, because his main reason is I have created this entire product, so can't I just enjoy some of my benefits? That is also good. But then what might have happened if we haven't seen this transaction? He might have converted, he might have dumped all of his Sushi tokens, and then the project is gone. All like other people's money who has like bought in Sushi thinking that it might grow up, everything is gone, right? So we need to be very careful. Like when a project is first launching, always try to read the smart contract. If it is not available, please wait. Don't go into the FOMO space.
I think
So
the recent point would be what happened to this. What is this? What was the coin where the Buterik he dumped all his coins? SHIB. SHIB. What was
Ship,
the
ship,
yeah.
ship.
so
Its value just because one big guy dropped all his coins, and the investors who were like looking to make money out of it basically lost all of it.
Yeah, and then I can give you multiple examples. I don't want to take the name of the exchange, but since I work in an exchange, I know some examples. You all know about this Bitcoin Gold, right? Or PAXG. Basically, they are tokens which are backed by gold. So I'm just giving examples how some investors are very foolish. Sorry to say this, but what happened is there is this one YouTube video where that guy is saying BTG, sorry, not Bitcoin Gold. Sorry, my bad. I'm not talking about Bitcoin Gold. I'm talking about PAXG, the gold backed token. Bitcoin Gold is like actually a fork of Bitcoin. Sorry, sir, very sorry. So I'm talking about PAXG, which is a gold backed token. That means it's just like stable coin. So it always basically what is the current that 1 ounce or basically 242 ounces or something. So what's the current price of gold in the market? That should be the price of this token, because it is clearly digital gold. But I have seen a YouTube video where that guy is claiming this PAXG will go 40x in 2 days. And people started buying it at that time. According to the current price of gold, the token should be valued around 1,60,000 rupees or something in one exchange. And I have seen people buying it for 3.5 lakh rupees. So don't be those guys. Always make sure, always verify like what is this token, what is this project about. So you might have seen this recent news where some people have bought SHIB at 1,600 rupees. I'm like, I don't know why those people have bought, but like, don't be blind investors. Always try to research.
Bala, one more question. Someone.
So Imran has asked a question about how does a decentralized currency system deal with whales who can maliciously influence the price and the value?
So can you please repeat again? Sorry, I lost your voice.
How does a decentralized currency system deal with whales who can maliciously influence price or value?
Yeah, so that's what I tried to answer earlier also.
I think I can add on. It's nice if you can tell the people about what the 51% attack means. I think it would be something interesting for people to find out.
Okay, I got your point. Okay, basically there are two things here. When we say decentralized money or decentralized systems, there are two things. Basically, in crypto, it's not like I can say it's not like types of crypto, but I usually divide them into two types. One is crypto with its own blockchain called crypto coin. Basically, like usually people call them as coins, and other are tokens. So what are these tokens? These tokens doesn't have its own blockchain. They live on another blockchain. For example, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Binance, BNB, or else like you can say EOS. All of these have its own blockchain, and all the supply and everything is being controlled by this blockchain network, the mining, the consensus, and everything. And there are some coins, for example, BAT, or else like the shape, all of these, they don't have their own blockchain. They live on Ethereum blockchain, or maybe like some live on the Binance Smart Chain. So now what happens to these coins is those like for example Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin, how many Bitcoin that gets generated every 10 minutes or every block, all of this is being maintained by the consensus protocol, where let's say if someone needs to change something, let's say I want to propose something which will improve Bitcoin. Like I want to make a proposal, I'm a techie guy, I want to make a proposal. So how this works is I have to go to the Bitcoin developers page, and there is something called Bitcoin Improvement Protocol, BIP. So I have to create a BIP, and this BIP will be voted upon by Bitcoin holders and developers. And if this vote passes, then only that proposal will be included in the next release. So basically now the issue here is there is something called 51% of the 51% attack, which has actually happened on Maker some time ago. So what happens with it's like voting, right? For example, I can give an example where nobody likes Trump in US, but he got elected as president. Who knows? Because popularity, vote. So likewise, if anyone holds more than 51% of that particular blockchain currency, that particular person or organization can overturn that blockchain. That is still possible. We call it as 51% attack in blockchains. So that is for coins. Now coming to tokens. So usually this BAT or maybe like Matic or whatever the new tokens that we are talking about. So these tokens, most of the times, they're all pre-minted. For example, in Bitcoin, what is happening? Every block, some new coins are getting generated. And then basically that is being controlled. But if you see this BAT or SHIB, all these tokens, what happened? They are pre-minted. That means during the initiation itself, they will say, okay, our total supply is 10 billion or 21 million or 10 million. They will mint all of these tokens and they will lock some of these tokens for developers, and they will say they'll put a lock saying developers can access this only after 3 years, 4 years, or maybe like in multiple releases, so they can do all this stuff. And the other thing is they will give some of these tokens, but they will put like 20%, 30% of these tokens for sale. So that's what happened with SHIB. So what did the SHIB developers did? We don't know the background story, but from the news, what we can read, what we can say is SHIB developers, they created trillions of tokens. What they have done, they said that as a developer, we don't want to own anything. What they have done, they have converted into two parts. One part they have put in Uniswap liquidity pool, and another part they sent it to Vitalik. Nobody would have assumed that Vitalik would, because whenever there is a new project in Ethereum, it's like a customary thing where everyone sends some tokens to Vitalik. It's like, because he's the founder of Ethereum, so we just give some free money kind of thing. But nobody would have assumed that Vitalik would actually like donate or like
And
transfer
it's
that
also
stuff.
an excellent marketing strategy that Vitalik is actually a builder of that coin.
Yes, yes. So now in these kind of scenarios, there is no proper way where we can say that whether that particular project is handling like how whales moves, no proper way. That all depends on that particular product or project itself. So the project can put in conditions where they can say if like the transaction limits, or maybe they can say, okay, as a whale, you can only do this after this amount of time. All this need to be put in the smart contract itself. So that we can only verify by reading the smart contract code. There is no other way.
So I'm sorry, Mo, go ahead.
Yes,
Go ahead.
no, Vikram, after you.
So I think you mentioned a very important concept, Bala, and I think maybe some people have questions as to what is a smart contract exactly. Like when the smart contract system was introduced with Ethereum, and what makes it so radically different from, for example, a Bitcoin blockchain. So maybe you could elaborate a little bit on this.
Sure. I'll try to do that. So basically, when Bitcoin blockchain was first created, or basically as of now, still Bitcoin blockchain has only one thing, that is store of value. So the only operation that you can do in Bitcoin blockchain is payment or transfer, or maybe like you can group in multiple payments together. That's it, right? That's the only agenda or motive behind Bitcoin. So when it comes to Ethereum is not like Bitcoin. Ethereum gives you the ability of basically the ability to build your own applications on top of Ethereum. To give a better example, Bitcoin is like a washing machine or AC, which is designed specifically for its own purpose. Even in a washing machine or even in an AC, there is a small computer or microchip, right? Which will do its work. Like when you click on button 1, it will increase the speed, things like that. But Ethereum is like a general computer. It's like a Windows operating system where you can build your own apps on top of it. So now, like when you're building apps, you need to write code, right? For example, you need to prepare some code either in Java or like whatever the language we usually prefer. So this code, this program that we talk about in other systems, in Ethereum or basically in blockchain, we call them as smart contracts. A smart contract is nothing but a piece of code that lives on blockchain, and that basically performs actions according to whatever the instructions you have put in that code.
So, Bala and Chinmay, I think so. We have overshot by 10 minutes. We'll take, we'll take, we'll
I think
take.
one question which I think would do nice for I think everybody on the panel. So Vikram has asked an excellent question over here that how does a token of a coin have an intrinsic value? So for example, if Bitcoin is trading at 45K, what causes it to trade at 45K except the demand and supply? That's an intrinsic value to the coin itself.
Okay, so coming to this point, yes, so basically, again, we can convert it into two types. One is the speculative coins, one is the actual utility coins, right? For example, PAXZ. PAXZ is a coin which is backed up by gold. For example, for every PAXZ token that is living on blockchain, there is equivalent amount of gold that is being held somewhere in safely. Likewise, we have stable coins like Tether or maybe like the DAI, BUSD, all of the stable coins. For every stable coin that is existing, there is equivalent amount, whether in fiat or crypto, that is being held somewhere. So that's the intrinsic value for these coins. But there are some coins which does not have, like you can say, this kind of background or maybe like the deposits. For example, basic attention token, BAT is there. So what's the intrinsic value of BAT? The intrinsic value of that is that application, the amount of users that are using it, like the amount of use cases that it do. And then basically in Bitcoin also the similar thing. So Bitcoin, how does a Bitcoin has intrinsic value? One is supply and demand, as Aditya said. The other point is how it is being generated and how it is being controlled or regulated. Because of that only the intrinsic value comes. For example, if people can suddenly start generating instead of 6.25 maybe 100 bitcoins per block, then there is no value, right? The intrinsic value of Bitcoin lies in that Bitcoin consensus. So if you trust that Bitcoin consensus, it lies in there. If you don't trust it, it's like you don't trust a country's economic system, then basically there is no value for that.
So agreed. So it's a perceived value. So
it's a perceived value, yeah, I can say. And some people argue that Bitcoin is being born out of a process called mining, where they're like spending dollars and all this stuff. Some people argue that, but I don't agree with this because that mining need not be like proof of work. It can be proof of stake or some other form also. So it's a perceived value. Yeah.
So there is a valid question from our friend over here, Akshita. She has asked, what are the key coins details you look at before buying it? Which is it a market cap or
So
anything
let's
else?
say like no, not exactly market cap. So let's say if I am buying it, let's say, because I cannot answer for everyone, right? I'll just answer for myself. So when I am buying new coins, the first thing is I look at the use case of that coin. What is that coin for? The team, whether the team has any credentials before, like where they have worked, or maybe like if I can find their profiles or something, the reviews and all. And the other thing is the supply of that coin, the ratio of supply to coin market cap, not coin market cap, like how many coins are there and what's the current ratio. I can give you one best example right now. Again, like now it is in bull run, right? And now if you see, there are some people, they argue that Ethereum can go to 50K. But how can it go if Ethereum is already half of the market cap of Bitcoin? So by reaching 8K or 10K, Ethereum will cross Bitcoin's market cap, that is more than $1 trillion. So if it has to reach 50K, that means it has to have a market cap of more
5
than
times.
$6 trillion. Yeah, $5 to $6 trillion. How it is possible? So always check the supply versus market cap ratio, not just the market cap or not just the price.
But you never know. So again,
Yeah, we
I
never
have
know. Yeah, that is a great question. But then like this 50K cannot happen within 2 weeks, right? Yeah, it can
absolutely.
happen obviously in like next 5 years, 10 years.
So there is a connecting question. So kind of a loop question we always get on the group that so use case तो ये है लेकिन XRP क्यों नहीं बढ़ रहा है? Ripple इतना नाम तो इतना क्यों नीचे है? Why it is so undervalued? So if you can just answer के with an example of Ripple that if anyone wants to buy a Ripple or Matic
Yeah,
or
understood.
XYZ.
Basically, yeah, I can clearly understand because you can say if you see if you talk about project, Ripple is being used by banks already. That means Ripple is already in a proper use case compared to Bitcoin, which is mostly speculative. Like Tesla is accepting, that is okay. But if you see, Ripple is actually being used by banks. But the main issue with Ripple is buying Ripple is not exactly holding that power of that blockchain. Because if you see, Ripple is being used by banks, but for banks, they don't actually need Ripple to pay fee or something. It can be a Ripple. In Ripple, it is possible that I can host like a private network or private node of Ripple, and I can do transactions internally. So when you buy Ripple, it's like you're buying a share of Tesla or TCS rather than buying Bitcoin, where you actually hold some power or authority of that consensus system.
So apart from the value of these coins or tokens going up and down, is there any other reward mechanism built into these coins? So for example, if for example Ethereum, we trade Ethereum, we make money, etc., etc. But is there any other way that Ethereum, the community, the management team, they can reward the holders of the coins?
Yes, yes. So there is a way. So there is not a direct way, and there are some coins which give you like for holding it for like long time. They'll give you some extra tokens. For example, Ampleforth is one such type blockchain where it's a rebasing currency. That means what they do, they always try to maintain a fixed market cap or fixed price. Let's say you have 100 Ample today, and then like somehow the price is increasing or decreasing, they'll release a new Ample and they'll credit it to your account automatically. You don't need to do anything. So that is one type of currency. But in Ethereum, and basically if you see Matic, Ethereum, or basically any blockchain which is based on proof of stake, so these proof of stake blockchains, they give you additional functionality where, so instead of holding your coins like normally, what you can do, you can stake those coins, you can be part of that governance system and get additional rewards.
Also, one more question with the say on the same thing, like how to make more money, or so there is a lot of jargons, like we understand, but for many people there are jargons called like a staking. Let's do staking. So Anjan is someone who understands this form really well, because again he's an expert on that. So Anjan, you have any question on staking and which can help the group?
No, guys. Actually, so what I do is I operate like Bala was speaking about validators. So on the Cardano network, as a stake pool operator, I'm basically another validator, and that's how it works. And the staking on Cardano platform is very different compared to staking on ETH or any of the other platforms like AVAX also, where you'll have to probably send your coins to another wallet address. So you'll have to lock it up for a certain period of time. But in Cardano, the staking happens with you keeping your coins in your wallet. You're free to use it as you please. And I also believe you'll be able to farm with your coins in almost the same manner. But this is how much I know about staking in Cardano. I don't know much about
So again, the question was that as Anjan mentioned regarding staking on Cardano or staking on Ethereum. Okay, so Bala and or Chinmay, whoever can take up that question and who can help us understand what does staking means and what does staking means on different blockchain systems.
And you could also contrast that with what farming means.
Okay, I got your point. So basically, first let's discuss staking, and then we can go to farming. Okay, so now staking means is basically, you all know that, like we all know that Bitcoin runs on a consensus protocol called proof of work, right? So where we have already discussed, where the miner has to like do some complex mathematical or solve some complex mathematical thing and then attach it as a proof saying that okay, I'm a proper guy. So now this is like very energy consuming thing and time consuming thing also. So that's why like most of the latest blockchains, they are using another kind of like consensus mechanism called staking or proof of stake. So that means here, earlier in Bitcoin blockchain, what happens if you mine, like basically you spend all that electricity and all this thing to prove that you are a normal user, you are not a spammer. But even if you spam, the only thing is like you will be at a loss because you have spent all that like electricity and all this stuff. So now in staking, how it works? So in staking, how it works is, so instead of doing that, what the staking protocol will do, for example, we're all part of the staking pool. So now in this, for example, in these currencies which you staking, what they do is they'll give, instead of people trying to solve the block for the, like, instead of it's a race against time kind of concept, in these pools, what it will do, we have to buy our ticket, or you can say we have to buy our spot. So how do we buy our spot? We need to put some money at stake. For example, in Ethereum, you need to put a minimum of 32 Ether so that you can be one validator. So now what's the advantage is, once you put this 32 Ether and you form a validator node and you do this stuff, what happens next? The protocol will randomly select some people and assign that, okay, Aditya, now it is your option. Like now it's up to you. You form the block now. So Aditya can form the block, and then like we can't just trust Aditya, right? So that block will be sent for voting for, like, again randomly chosen people. These randomly chosen people will again vote on that block. If it passes successfully, we'll include it in blockchain. So now when Aditya is forming this block and other people who are randomly voting, all these guys will earn that staking reward instead of mining reward. So that's the process. If Aditya is like doing a fabricated transaction, or if he's trying to cheat the system, because Aditya has already deposited that money, right? The blockchain protocol will put a penalty on his money. So that's how you can participate in this governance system and earn extra money. So now when it comes to staking, there are two kinds of staking protocols. One is normal proper proof of stake, another is delegated proof of stake. The difference is, in proper proof of stake, for example, I'm not remembering the name exactly, like it's been a while. So there are some protocols which use proper proof of stake, where what you have to do is, like, you either need to be the validator. For example, Aditya is the validator. So either Aditya should put the money. Let's say Monil does not have enough money or enough funds to be a normal validator, because usually these validators have some limit. For example, in Ethereum, you need to have at least 32 Ether. On Dash, you need to have at least 100 or 1000 Dash. So all these things. So what Monil can do, Monil can send his funds to Aditya, so that Aditya can stake on behalf of Monil and maybe share some rewards. But the issue here is the ownership is actually being transferred, right, from Monil to Aditya. So let's say if Aditya tries to cheat and run away with money, he can do that. So to avoid this, there are some things like called delegated proof of stake. For example, I think Cosmos is a blockchain which uses delegated proof of stake. So here what you can do is, the ownership will still be with you only, but you will just lock up those tokens with Aditya's validator for certain amount of time. So here the risk is, if Aditya's validator goes down, or if he does any, let's say, double signing or something, you will be given penalties, but the actual amount is still safe. But here the thing is, like, you will earn a bit less because Aditya will be taking his cut. So there are like two ways: normal proof of stake and delegated proof of stake. So by doing staking, you are actually, what you are doing is, you are actually participating in the governance protocol of the blockchain, and you are like adding to the security of the blockchain, we can say, and you will be rewarding for doing good activity. So now farming is completely different thing. So farming does not involve the governance or anything. So farming, in simple words, is very simple. Let's say like in DeFi protocols like Uniswap or Compound or any of these DeFi protocols are there, right? So Uniswap, what you can do, you can provide liquidity to a particular pair and earn fee. So I saw that today Ethereum and DAI pair is very popular. So I'll put liquidity into that pool. I'll earn money. Tomorrow there is one more pair very popular. I'll remove liquidity from this and I'll put it there. So basically selecting that best pair which will give me highest returns at that particular time. That's farming. So either you can do it manually, or you can join some protocols like Yearn Finance or Curve. So these things, and you can lock up your money into their vaults, and their vault engines will automatically manage your portfolio so that you can earn better returns.
Wonderful. Bala, what we can do is now we can do an open Q&A session where our friends over here who have joined in can raise their hand, and we can take at least 5 to 7 questions, which will help us understand better about the crypto. So anyone from our group who wants to go first can just raise their hand.
I know the time limit has been breached, so
Breached,
we'll
yeah.
keep it as crisp as possible.
Yes, please. Anyone wants to ask a question, please raise a hand.
Test. Yeah, what would you
Yes, test can go ahead with the question, and please introduce yourself because we don't know your name, buddy. You have to unmute yourself. Test.
I think I saw that question. Basically, the question is like, which are some good coins to buy right now? So I can't.
Oh, that is something.
Yeah,
that is something. It will be very biased. That we can discuss on the group.
I think this is the correct forum for that question.
Anyone else?
Yeah.
Hi guys. So I just wanted to, I do understand Chinmay mentioned this towards the start of the conversation when he was talking about wallets, and a couple of links were also shared, I think, on chat. If you could just throw a little more light on the wallets bit, I understand that I've asked this question on the group a couple of times and I've gotten responses from the admins. Just wanted to understand if, obviously security is paramount. So how important is it? Where does it need to be one of those physical thumb drives? Or can it be like one of those trust wallet things? Just a little dope on wallets, just a little bit.
Okay. So that depends, again, that depends from person to person. Personally, I never put any funds on my mobile, like things like trust. Like I do put funds, but very few, like $100, $200. I always try to put my funds either in a reputed things like Binance, BlockFi, things like that. Like if I want to use exchange wallets or like custodial wallets. Otherwise, I always try to put my funds on hardware wallets. I use a Trezor personally. Because nobody knows like when your computer might get hacked or like when someone might steal your mobile phone and transfer funds. So we're not sure. That's why I usually put. And let's say if anybody is managing in millions of dollars, assume that I can't answer directly, but yeah, sometimes as part of our company we do manage millions of dollars, for various reasons. So for these things, what I recommend is always try to use a multi-sig wallet, even though it is being managed by a single person. So what's the advantage? Let's say I'm a person, I have $1 million in crypto. So now the thing is, let's say if I use a single, like a normal wallet, what can happen if my wallet gets hacked because of some various reasons? My seed words got exposed, or maybe like I got threatened or something. So now what can happen? All of my funds are gone. Now assume that what we have to do is, I'll deploy a multi-sig contract, like you can use Gnosis, which is very famous multi-sig. So, and then what we can do is we can set up 2 or 3 keys. One can be your hardware wallet, one can be your mobile wallet, and one can be a paper wallet or something. So that in this case, even if one is exposed, like we usually don't put all 3 in a single place, right? Then there is no use of putting a multi-sig. So in this case, like if you do follow this kind of principle where you create a multi-sig wallet with like 2 out of 3 or 3 out of 5 options, then keep like all the keys to these wallets in different places, so that even if one is exposed, the other 2 are still safe and you'll get some time to transfer or move funds.
I think so. Vikram has a question. Go ahead, Vikram.
Yeah, hi guys. Thanks for the session. First of all, really enjoying it. Total noob here again. So I'm just trying to get a picture of the whole ecosystem. So my question is, in a distributed P2P trustless environment, which is the whole concept here, what is the role of exchanges? Why do we need to go through an exchange to transfer or trade or buy or sell?
Okay. So basically, in an actual blockchain scenario or blockchain space, there is no role for exchanges. These exchanges or these companies, they have invented their own role. So basically what happens is, let's say, let's talk about Bitcoin blockchain. So how can you enter into Bitcoin blockchain? One thing is you can run your own Bitcoin node and then earn that block reward. That is one concept. But now because of this competition and all, as a normal person, we cannot run a mining mission, right? Because of various reasons. So now the other way is you need to buy Bitcoin from someone. So like someone should be transferring their Bitcoin to you. So now let's say I know Chinmay has some Bitcoin, maybe we do the OTC trade and then basically he'll just transfer. But for a normal person, he needs to find a proper, like you can say proven seller or buyer, right? Example, if you see there used to be like India Bitcoins or maybe like local Bitcoins, all these websites where you can find lots of buyers, is like OLX. But there the issue is you don't know whether that seller is a genuine guy or not. But now when it comes to exchanges, you know that that seller is a genuine guy, because when that seller is placing an order on an open book exchange, that means the seller has already deposited their funds to the exchange, and exchange makes sure that you will get your funds.
Got it.
And
So
let's
like
say, like,
almost an entry gate to the network.
like an entry gate, yeah.
Got it. Thanks.
And then like if you want to do trading more, like if you want to do like trade on hundreds of different tokens or currencies, then exchange is like an option. It's just like stock exchange, you can say.
Lovely. Anyone who wants to go next? Naman, you want to ask a question? Please go ahead. Unmute yourself and ask a question.
Hello, everyone. Bala, I just wanted to know if putting your money in STFs is a good option. If you are not looking for daily trading, maybe investing it for a good amount of time, say maybe a couple of years, then is it a good option to go for STFs?
So STF, again, it depends. For example, because I'm not into finance that much, I'm mostly like a techie guy and holder. But let's say from STF, what I understand is this token funds that these exchanges and all these guys launch, right? So if that token fund like mostly deals with Bitcoin, Ether, and almost all popular coins, then it's a good option. But sometimes some token funds try to speculate more and they try to enter IDOs and then do stuff. Then it might be a bit more risky.
Ben, you want to ask a question? Please
Okay,
unmute yourself.
so I'll try to answer that question. Why do all blockchain projects have tokens? So the thing here is it's not required that all blockchain projects should have tokens. But then why is the need of these tokens? Is, as we all understand, blockchain runs on decentralized networks, right? So for example, let's say I'm running Facebook. So now this Facebook is being hosted on like an Amazon or maybe Microsoft servers, and Facebook guys, they pay to Amazon directly using US dollars or something. But now in a decentralized scenario, let's say when you are doing a blockchain transaction, so how do you pay for that miner? Like miner is the guy who's processing this transaction, right? So how do you pay for that miner? Whether you pay it in like Russian currency, Indian rupee, US dollars. So that means we need to have like our own currency system where we can make these payments in like safe and in like the best possible way. So that's where the tokens or these coins comes in. It's just like to pay for our transactions and to control the ecosystem.
Any other questions, please? I have a question. Can I go ahead?
Yes,
oh, sorry. There's Vikram. Yes, Vikram.
No, go ahead, Monil. I can go after you.
Okay. So my question is very, very straight and simple. What is the future of crypto? Everyone asks, where is it going in India? How? Because you guys have seen the bad times. You guys have seen the crypto getting banned. There are a lot of people over here who have not seen that era. Where Ratorat crypto was banned, and so if you want to just brush upon that,
Sure.
that concept.
I'll try to give my points. I think like Chinmay can add more here. So the thing
Yes,
is like
please.
first thing I want to clear is crypto never got banned in India. The thing like the RBI guidelines says they thought that crypto might be like a bad thing for Indian customers. Maybe like they don't want to encourage Indian customers to buy in crypto. So what they have done, they have given a circular to the banks saying stop providing services to crypto companies like exchange companies. That's it. They don't have the right, or basically the government never banned crypto. It's just that the banks have stopped providing services to crypto companies. So let's say, like, as of now, at least in India, the only way to get into crypto is you need to have that fiat on ramp, right? Where you need to deposit INR into exchange wallet and use that to buy crypto. So because that got stopped, the transaction got stopped, the exchange volumes went low, and basically people assume that it got banned or something, but it never got banned. For example, I don't want to take a name of the exchange, but there are some exchanges which have done transaction during that time also using peer-to-peer model, using USDT pairs, using INR pairs. It's just that the fiat on-ramp has been blocked, and then basically people found it difficult to buy crypto. That's it.
There is one more question which is related to this. Again, we have a lot of people on the group who ask the thing, how safe is crypto now? Like we working on or we buying on say this exchanges? Okay, as you have already brushed upon that we should have our own hard wallet. But again, who are
Okay, so
new?
yeah.
Yeah.
So as of now, exchanges are fairly secure because you might have seen a lot of hacks that might have happened in the exchange, and even in India also. I forgot the name of that coin. There is one exchange, Bitcoin exchange, which got hacked, and then basically all the users' funds got liquidated. But I'm not remembering the name because that was like 3 to 4 years ago, like not like around 3 years ago. Sorry.
So does this
CoinSecure, I think, yeah.
yeah, and does this exchanges take that or provide such kind of insurance that if we are having
As of now, I'm not sure. I'm not sure about like the new exchanges that are popping up right now. Like as of now, there are some small exchanges here and there. Everybody wants to start their own exchange, but at least the old exchanges, I mean to say, like you can say the top 3 or top 4 in India or all over the world, like Coinbase, Binance, all of these guys have taken note of all of these points. So now it would be very difficult to hack an exchange. The only way is basically if the exchange founders or maybe like the developers run away with their own money. That's like a totally different scenario. But at least in our exchange, we usually make sure that the funds are very secure. So we don't put all the funds like online or hot wallet. So we have like several processes to make sure that even if hot wallet gets hacked, it will be like only 0.1 or like 1% of our exchange funds. Like that's the maximum that anyone can hack into it. If you want to hack the other part of the funds, you need to have like permissions of several people. So that's what I said. If the founders suddenly think that, oh, let's run away with the money, that's a totally different thing. But as of now, exchanges are fairly secure.
So we can take that it's fairly secured and we can trade like without any fear.
Yeah, always try to trade on at least popular or like reputed exchanges which have been there for like few years. Don't try to like I can't say the name, but then recently there is this one exchange which is like simple, secure, and they try to start their funds. But then I'm not sure, like because they might be very secure also. It's just that it's not proven it.
Because to just prove that point, there is one Bitcoin India which went kaput right now, and we have a member of the group whose money is locked in, and he's going through a troublesome time because he's not able to get his money out, and a huge amount of money which was in. So I can take that from.
If I can just jump in here. So I
Yes,
think the basic point here is that with any amount of money that you're putting into any third party custodial exchange, you need to be sure that what you're putting in is something that you're risking a little bit, right? Like you would do with a bank today. Banks have grown to be more secure, but the nature of crypto is that just by hacking in, they can steal your crypto, right, by transferring it out, and then there's no way to get it back, right? So just like I think Bala covered very well, there are a lot of ways where you can either select a hardware wallet, or you do your research. So there are places like BitGo and BlockFi, which are rated really highly for their security around the world, right? So these are places where if you feel like, okay, I don't want to really get into even storing or managing that piece, then for a large amount of your crypto, then choose such places, right? And then keep only what you would like to trade on these exchanges, right? So I think you have to take precaution from that standpoint. You cannot assume that anybody is safe, but relatively, like Bala said, that we are moving to a stage where these things are getting tightened up. These things are but at the end of the day, you have to understand it's a race.
Yes.
Between the hackers and the people trying to secure it, right?
And then like one more thing I just want to add here is it's not only exchanges part. For example, some people, they just create accounts, they don't even have MFA enabled or something like that. Then hacker don't need to target the exchange, they can just target your Gmail, and then basically, because I personally have seen one of my friends who is storing their exchange passwords on their desktop and pin it there. So now anybody who can see it can actually steal the funds, right? And I have seen one person, I was just doing some class like 2 years ago.
Bara, can we have his number? Huh?
And then that person, what that person have done is he exposed his seed words directly in the entire live class. So like he's sharing the screen, and then he is having the seed words to his MetaMask account directly on the screen. So then one of the guys in that live class actually withdrew all the funds and then gave it back to him.
He was probably teaching him how to do it as well, like how to use MetaMask.
Yeah, so like it's not only the exchanges part, it's up to the individuals also. We always make sure that enable the MFA, and if you are dealing with more funds, enable whitelisting, all these options which exchanges are providing to make your crypto safe.
There is a question by Vikram. Vikram, please go ahead.
Yeah, hi, thanks, Monil. So on the group, and this is not a trading question, but on the group, many times we say, "Oh, this is a good use case, therefore it can be a valuable coin in the future." What is the connection between a valuable use case and a valuable coin? Is there a fundamental connection, or how does a good use case make a coin actually valuable?
So here there are like two things that we need to consider. One is yes, a good use case is there, but then the team that is like developing that good use case need to be strong as well. Because I can just say like a very popular use case, but if I don't have the team to execute it, it's all wasted. That is one thing. The another thing is, even though if there is a good use case, but you need to see what is the value of that token in that use case ecosystem. For example, if you consider BAT, why I'm saying BAT is just like a very popular thing right now. So if you see BAT, Brave Attention Token, the BAT token or coin is directly embedded into that BAT ecosystem. For example, if you want to buy some ad space in Brave ecosystem, you need to use BAT. Like when you're rewarding, they use BAT. So BAT is tightly coupled. And let's take the example of XRP. XRP has very beautiful use case, but XRP is not tightly coupled into that use case, right? So we need to check that one also.
There is a question by Mr. Chinoy. Please, you can go ahead.
Hi, good evening. Thanks a lot for organizing this, Monil, and thanks Bala and others to really educate us. My question is just carrying on forward from what you answered, was on the use cases. Can you share some examples of tokens which are live use case which are happening now, where people are using it in practical sense, and for the layman to see how this is working? And it's like any currency, like the US dollar today is used everywhere, and because it's used everywhere, it is getting stronger. In similar lines, if certain tokens or certain use cases are practically today being used to do certain transactions that we understand, then we know that, okay, this is something that may have a better future or is more trusted.
Yeah, so basically there are lots of projects that are being practically used as of now. So as I said, Brave or Basic Attention Token is one of such projects which have like live use case now. Like you can say Filecoin have live use case now, StoreJ has live use case now. Yeah, there are lots of examples, and there is this one website called State of the Dapps. state STAT, state of the dApps, DApps, basically decentralized applications. So in that website, you can see almost all dApps from all major blockchains like EOS, Ethereum, Binance Smart Chain, everything. You can see the rankings. You can see like how many users are using that app every day. So maybe like this might help you to make some decision.
Thanks. I just opened that. I'll have a look at it. Thanks a lot.
We can take a last question. I think so. Nikhil wants to ask a question.
Yeah, thanks, Monil. So Bala, I just need to understand when we talk about blockchain and stuff. So when we talk about blockchains, always the financial sector is being linked up. Is there any possibility that we can use the same technologies in a different domain? For example, travel, agriculture, it can be anything. So can be a possibility.
Yeah, it is possible. When we talk about finance and stuff, because we're talking about crypto trading and things like that, we're talking about these things. But it is possible that there can be a blockchain existing which does not have any finance side to this. For example, almost all private blockchains that we talk about, like in supply chain, as of now, blockchains are being used in healthcare, supply chains, manufacturing,
Okay.
secondary marketplaces, lot of places. It's just that we are in exchange world, so we talk about finance now.
So basically, the blockchain technology, Nikhil, it's basically for recording transactions and basically recording activity. So that use case can be applied to almost every industry. The reason you're hearing more about the financial side of it is because we are talking about the cryptocurrencies primarily rather than the Bitcoin. So the currencies are tradable, the underlying technology has a use case, hence you hear more about the currencies rather than the blockchain.
Okay, understood.
Just to add a real use case scenario to this, right, that Cardano.
Vikram, your voice is very low.
You're not audible.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
No,
a little better, a little louder.
So basically, one of the real world use case scenarios that you could have seen today is Cardano signing a deal with the Ethiopian government. They want to bring the national identity register onto the blockchain. So what that basically means is similar to our Aadhaar and the records that are stored in the system that we use in India. Ethiopia has signed a deal to make this national identity register on the blockchain. So you basically have all entries and all records being decentralized on the blockchain, but obviously being controlled by the Ethiopian government.
Yes, yeah. So like,
worst case.
yeah. Like when it comes to real world use cases like that, I have personally worked on a couple of use cases where I have worked with a company called Maersk. Like it's a shipping and trading company, you might have heard about it, where we have developed a use case on Hyperledger Fabric, which is a private blockchain. So it keeps track of all the routes that the particular ship is taking, like or moving from one endpoint to another endpoint, and it keeps track of all the temperatures and everything and records them in blockchain and it gives a score. So based on this score, it decides whether to reward, like how much amount that we have to pay to that like the crew or maybe like the company that is handling stuff. And then there is actually another use case which is developed by like Indians. There is this company called Foodlens. You might have you can search it in Google. So basically what this Foodlens does, they track products direct from like the farmers to the supermarkets. So you can actually verify that yes, this food is an organic food instead of some people claiming it is organic. And like
sorry, Bal. So can we anticipate that a good big companies will issue their tokens and coins in near future, and that is the way of paying their end users and maybe their employees as well?
I can't say that because not every company needs to issue their own tokens. They can just use Bitcoin or maybe like other currencies, right? Usually it is required to issue your own token when your use case requires. For example, let's say I'm building a university where I want to take in crypto. I don't trust fiat. So now in this university, if I keep Bitcoin as my payment fee, it would not be beneficial for me, right? Because of the price fluctuation. So how much should I charge? Should I charge 1 Bitcoin, half Bitcoin? If I charge 1 Bitcoin and basically price gets double, other students may not be able to pay. So for this, I might need my own token, which kind of balances the price according to market and maybe like gives you a better idea. So in this kind of scenarios, I might launch my own token. But if I'm just paying salaries or if I'm just doing things, I can just use Ethereum or Bitcoin directly. No need, no?
So I think so. We have covered quite a bit.
Overshot by almost 3/4 of an hour, which shows the
Yeah,
interest in the
interest.
subject.
So thank you, both of you, for spending your Sunday evening with us and helping us how to make money more effectively, and also understanding the concepts much clearly. Even some points were very new to us as well. I can speak about myself over here, and I'm happy to be a part of this seminar, and looking forward to organizing more this kind of seminars with our friends over here. And thank you, Bala and Chinmay, for coming in and helping us out. We are very grateful. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to interact with lots of guys who are interested in crypto and basically blockchain. Thanks, Chinmay. Thanks, Chinmay, for referring me actually. Otherwise, I wouldn't have known about
An excellent team.
Thank you, everyone. I think it was very interesting. Bala is a superstar, so you guys should get hold of him and yeah.
Yeah, we intend
Sure,
to.
sure. Yeah. Like if you
Uh,
guys